Hello, my dear friends, old and new. I haven't been here for a while, and the main reason is because I didn't feel I'm creative enough. I was going through some, issues, and I don't like to repeat myself or to recycle other people's materials. So until I couldn't really come back here until I felt that I'm creative enough and I can do something original and something that has good value for you for the time you're going to spend watching this. So originally this video I intended to make it as a second part for the reality transurfing in 3 paragraphs. I think it looked something like that. And when I started to work on it, so many ideas came to my mind all of a sudden, I guess from all these months that I didn't make videos, that this video actually is a standalone, and it is a continuation, but it also, like I said, it stands alone and it doesn't require you to have any knowledge in reality transurfing. So I do connect some issues to reality transurfing, but it's not required to understand the content. And what I really wanted to achieve in this video for you is for you to understand what is the system or the machinery. It's spiritual, but we have to give it names, of creating a reality, manifesting, or generally changing your reality. Okay? And here I will get into some, they are of course metaphors, but I think it will give you a better insight. And once you have a better insight, it's easier and more actually fun, I would say, to create a new reality for yourself. When it comes to changing reality, most of the gurus, today's gurus, and maybe some from the past, like I'll just give you some names, like Vadim Zeland, who wrote Reality Transurfing, Abraham Hicks, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Neville Goddard, Dr. Wayne Dyer, Eckhart Tolle. They are all talking about the same mechanism, except that each one brings it for his own angle, right? Like Eckhart says, be in the moment. Vadim Zeland comes with actual pieces of equipment and buttons that you can press to change the track of reality you are on. And each one of them actually, Neville Goddard uses some religion in it, but most of them tell you the same thing, and you will see what I mean as we move forward here. So in this video, really, I will take you inside the control room where all these things are happening. I'm not sure it looks like that, but it's something similar. So get comfortable, grab a cup of relaxation, and watch as many times as necessary. And I'm sure that many of you will watch it more than once, just like many of my other videos. So I'm going to introduce here a totally new concept. What are the parts of self? Like, what are we made of? Because, if you try to think who you are or where you are, you can never really pinpoint it. It's something that you cannot really figure out who you are or where you are. Like, are you in your head? Are you in your heart? Are you up there on the ceiling? And so I'm going to introduce you to a totally new concept. What are the parts of self? And how to properly use them to achieve your goals. So in Reality Transurfing, he says, Vadim says that to achieve any goal or manifest it, which is the same actually, it must feel as natural as picking up your post from the mailbox. Just like as simple and as natural. And for that, your heart and your mind must be united. This is what Reality Transurfing says about manifesting something or achieving a goal. Now, it also talks about outer intention, which is really the same thing. In order to activate outer intention, you need to do exactly what I said before. And, it may sound very simple, but it's not. Otherwise, everybody would be a billionaire, and there would be no poor people in the world and no sick people in the world. And I don't know how the world would look. Many of you would probably say it would look very good, but I don't think so. The world would not even exist if it didn't have the polarity, if everything was just on one side. So, as I said, he's talking about heart and mind. And mind, you control your mind, but you don't control your heart. And the heart is not a rubber stamp. So what we'll do, we will first of all define what is meant by heart, and then we'll explore ways how to make it cooperate, work with it. Because without the heart, we cannot achieve anything. The mind will not do it, unless there's some people that don't have a heart. And I don't mean it in a negative way. It's just what you will see as I continue. There are certain people that do not need to consult the heart. Whatever they have in their mind, they can manifest. And whether those people are extras or like I think Dolores called them backdrop people, but there is a large number of humans which are like that. They don't need the heart to, like for example, Hitler was one of them, or Stalin, who killed, 20 or whatever million Russians just because. And, he couldn't care less, but that's what he wanted and that's what he did. So, not everybody can kill 20 million people. Now, ignore the good or bad of it, right? So if he managed to manifest that, it means that he was very strong in creating a reality for himself and for the whole world. But yet, he had no heart. And that's why he was successful, because he didn't have the need to unite the heart and the mind. Whatever was on his mind went straight into the reality creating machine. So the metaphor I want to use is a horse and a rider. This is kind of a mysterious horse that I brought here. And maybe where the heart is the rider, and the horse is actually the body and the mind, the physical you. Okay? Maybe it actually looks better that way, because most of the time, the heart cannot control the horse. The horse just does his own thing, and this is actually the main, I would say, the main challenge in life. That's why we cannot easily unite heart and mind, because as you can see in this picture, the horse, the mind, is running on its own. It's running its own race, and the heart is trying to catch up, but it doesn't have the ability, the tools to communicate with the horse, and it's done that way on purpose. The only way the heart can communicate with the rider. From now on, I'll use the rider and the horse instead of the heart and the mind, but this is what I mean. So the rider, which is actually part of God, part of the collective consciousness, the way it was set up, it cannot communicate with the horse through the five senses. It can only communicate with the horse through a sixth sense. Okay? And that's why it's all about feelings and emotions and instincts and all these fancy words. The rider lives forever, never dies. I would believe it always has the same identity, but when the horses change, the new horse does not remember the identity of the previous horse. And the rider, even though it's always the same identity, plays a new role here and starts a new show, a new play, every time the horses change. And this is, what you can call incarnation, reincarnation. Sometimes there is a leak from the old memory and people will remember things from previous lives, but the horse is new, okay, every time. So like I said, the rider lives forever, and the horses he rides have always the same identity, but they don't remember. The memory is erased, except, like I said, when there are bugs in there. And because the universe is based on uncertainty, nothing is 100%. There's absolutely nothing in our reality in the universe which is 100%. Everything is susceptible to this uncertainty. This is one of the basic rules of the universe. And this is also the reason science cannot create life, okay? Because you need a rider, and the rider is not physical. It does not have any physical attributes. The only way it can manipulate the physical world is through the horse. If it doesn't have a horse, it cannot do anything in the physical world. So let's see now how individual reality is created. And this is something that I talked about in a number of my videos. I was showing you this metaphor with the line that I draw, and I'll do it right now. It's a line that I draw on the iPhone or iPad, whatever you like. I'll bring it here, and I do it on purpose with the iPhone in my hand because it's much better to explain that way. So you see, this is a screen where I can draw with my finger on that screen on the iPhone. So here I draw a line. Let me just do it. Why doesn't it draw? There we go. Okay. So I draw a line here, right? And you can see it, right, in blue. And the question I always ask is, did I draw that line? And most people say, yes, you did. It's right there on the screen. And I say, no, I didn't draw that line. What I've done really is I moved my finger on the screen, and the screen, my finger has no ink, so I couldn't have drawn it. The screen has tiny sensors, probably thousands and thousands of them, which are connected to the computer, the central computing unit of that phone. And that CPU, it's called, is running under a program. And the program tells it that every time I touch one of those little sensors, it should put a blue dot there. And because it happens very quickly and there's lots of those dots, it looks like a line to you, okay? But I didn't draw it. It's the computer who drew it under my instructions, okay? Now, imagine that computer or the program had some problems in it, like a bug or something, right? Then the line wouldn't come out exactly like the one I drew. It could have come like a zigzag or a different color, or anything is possible, right? So keep that in mind, because I want to use that as a metaphor to reality creation. You see, the computer, that CPU, that central processing unit for this demonstration, is actually the rider. And when you create your reality, whatever you do, you jump, you speak, you shout, you eat, you don't actually do it, okay? You just draw the line, and the computer looks at it. It goes into the rider. The rider looks at it, and then the rider decides what to send into the reality creating machine. It doesn't send exactly what you drew on the screen. It's like a broken CPU that I said it can create a line in a different color or a different shape. The rider can do the same thing to the reality you're trying to create. And what it is based on mainly, okay, is on how much you believe. And I will use a different word in a minute rather than believe. Believe is not enough. How much you believe that what you are trying to create is possible, okay? So if you don't trust, the word I want to use is actually trust, not believe, okay? If you don't trust, and the difference between trust and believe is maybe it's a fine line, but trusting means 100%. It's like a child that will follow, a very young child will follow their parents even into the fire because they trust. So you have to come to a situation where you trust, okay? That's the only way the rider will pass the line anywhere close to what you intended. If you don't trust, then, the rider is sitting right on top of you and he knows what you're thinking. So then it will not happen. The only way you can trigger it is by trusting. See, we'll go back here to Reality Transurfing for a minute. Vadim Zeland says you have to make it as simple and believable as walking to the mailbox and picking up the post. Okay? I think I said that before. Because this you trust, right? When you go to the mailbox to pick up your letters, you trust 100% that you can achieve that goal. There is no, you know where your mailbox is, and you have done it probably hundreds of times. So there is no doubt in your mind. And that way, that reality creation goes through the way you intended. You actually go to the mailbox and you pick up your letter and you come and you can say, hey, that was success, 100%. So keep that in mind, that you have to trust just like you trust that. And see, the rider can create any reality. So when we also talk about outer intention, it means to pass it to the rider with full trust. Okay? The only obstacle that the rider has, which it cannot bypass, is your free will. Your free will is only yours. Okay? And the rider cannot bypass that. So in a life-threatening situation, and I talked about it before, when I was sliding with my car, I will try to put links to all these videos that I'm referring to in the description here, so you can go back and see. I basically lost control of my car on ice, and the car was sliding backwards at 100 kilometers an hour and on a very narrow road with cliffs on both sides. And I'm still here talking to you. And the reason I think I survived is because I passed control to the rider. I basically became an observer. I totally froze, like I didn't feel that I'm in the situation. I was just an observer. And by doing so, I passed control, like I didn't have free will anymore. So the rider could actually control my reality. And I believe that the rider, when it is put in a situation like that, has too much to lose by you dying. In some cases, maybe not, but in most cases, it still has, the race is not over and the horse is still, has energy, so the rider will actually save you. This is what he did to me. And I'll tell you another story here, a real story that happened to a very good friend of mine, who is a very kind of a materialistic person. He doesn't believe in anything except, in something he can touch. But this happened to him. And it's a good example how the rider can actually manipulate your reality when you let go. If you don't let go, it cannot do it. And this is what happened to my friend. His name is Conrad. And he was driving with his wife to his cabin, country house, or whatever you call it, which he had like for 10 or 12 years. So he knew the road very well. And it's a 2-lane narrow road, goes here in British Columbia. If you know the area, it's around Merritt. And he was going around, he told me, around 90 or 100 kilometers per hour. And he was with his wife. Otherwise, he probably would have believed that that was a dream. And all of a sudden, a car came out to pass a truck that was going in the other direction, and a car came out to pass that truck, and he was going straight towards them, also probably at 100 kilometers an hour. And there was no way to escape because the road didn't have a shoulder. Like it was a cliff with a fence, and there was no way he can move out. And he couldn't stop, he couldn't do anything. And the two cars were heading at each other at 100 kilometers an hour. And in essence, what that means that they will probably all die there in a big explosion. But then, this is, look at it like a movie, okay? This is a scene where you see these two cars coming towards each other, and there is absolutely no way they can avoid each other. It's a certain collision. And the next thing in Conrad's and his wife's reality is that they are driving on a road where there is no cars, and it's about 9 kilometers ahead of where they were, because he knows the road. And it's like the other scene is gone. It disappeared. And you know, they stopped on the side of the road and they started to talk to each other. Said, did you see what I saw? Is this real? And yes, it was real. The riders, I guess, of both of them, which in some ways they are the same, because it's all part of the higher consciousness, right? Switched the reality on them, because he didn't want them to die. Conrad also has a very badly disabled, mentally disabled child. You know, and him and his wife are looking, at that time were looking after that child. So the rider just did not want them to live this life. And this is what happened. It switched the reality on them. They just found themselves 9 kilometers ahead, driving, no car, like nothing happened. So I'm telling you this story because it influenced me was a very powerful influence on me, and it explained lots of things that I knew, but I wasn't sure. But this kind of gave me more, evidence. So let's go and see what are the rules of the game for the rider. Like I said before, it cannot communicate with you through the 5 senses. It can only communicate with you. This is not the one. Just 1 second. Okay. I don't have that slide. So it cannot communicate with you with the 5 senses. It can only communicate with you with the 5th sense by influencing your reality in some ways. It can actually cause you to be ill, for example. Like if the horse decide that there is a carrot on the side of the road, and you pull towards the carrot because that's what you want, and the rider actually wants you to go and become the prime minister, and you keep pulling towards the carrot, and it cannot control you. It doesn't have no reins and no 5 senses to talk to you. It will actually cause you to be ill, just to get your attention. And eventually, if you keep going after the carrot, it may actually, so to say, get rid of you. If you don't understand the message, when you get some serious illness, you have to look and see, okay, what have I done that my heart actually didn't want me to do, wanted me to do something else. If you can figure that one out, you will heal. I guarantee you. It doesn't matter what it is. Okay, just like with Conrad, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just the reality changes. It's not that it's not actually that the rider is healing you. It just changes the reality. It's like a movie. It just changes the film, and you don't have that anymore. And I have many stories about things like that happen to people that I know, and I will try to tell them to you in other videos. Here it's going to be too long if I try to get into it. So the next question is, what does the rider want? Like, because what the rider wants is actually the purpose of life, right? So the rider, which is an extension of God, like I said, wants emotional experiences. He wants you, the physical entity, to create experiences that the rider cannot create without the physical world, like in consciousness. You cannot create any kind of an emotion that's created by interacting with another person in your mind. It's impossible unless you have some memories. You can repeat them, like some sexual or love scenes from your from your past. But if you are not in the physical reality, you cannot create them in the first place. So what the rider wants, and this is why this world actually has been created, he wants those emotional experiences. And when he gets the horse, which is you in this life, right, it also knows immediately what's the personality of that horse and what abilities it has, skills or talents, and the rider wants to utilize those as far as possible. So if you are a gifted musician when you are born, the rider wants you actually to pursue that all the way as far as possible. If you do that, you will be happy, your reality will be good, the rider will not fight with you, the heart will always agree with what you want, and life will be good. But if you decide to go and become a scientist, you will not have a good life. You will be very unhappy, and it will be constant conflict between what we call the soul and the mind, the heart and the mind. In this case, I'm talking about the rider, which represents those, right? So even when we talk about excitement, anxiety, anger, love, sorrow, anticipation, etc., those are all emotions the rider cannot create, and is looking for you to create them. So every time you create any of these emotions, it's like food for the rider, and it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative, okay? Because everything is it's polarized in this world. So you need, whether you like it or not, you will create both. So creativity, innovation, surprises, constant change. I think constant change is one of the most important aspects for a happy life, because when you do something the first time, regardless of what it is, any experience you have the first time, you really enjoy it, and it's exciting and everything. But if you keep doing it for a long time, it becomes routine, right? And it's not exciting anymore for you and for the rider. So constant change is critical to create those experiences over and over and over. You need to start new things all the time. And the problem is that when we age, we reduce that, and that causes us to age more. It's a catch-22. It's a vicious circle, because the more you age, you slow down, and then you age more because you slow down. So people that are very active, some people in business, they are in their 90s. There is somebody like that here in Vancouver, a billionaire. I think his name is Jim Pattison. He probably somewhere between 90 and 100, but he still runs his company, and his mind, everything is good. It's because he did not stop creating. So as I said, obviously any action you take to generate those will be fully supported and encouraged by the rider, okay? Meaning that you will have a good life. Now, again, keep in mind that the horse has free will, and the rider cannot override that, okay? So don't expect the rider to do things against your free will. He's not going to do it. And as I said before, a conflict between the rider and the horse will always result in problems, physical, mental, but some serious problems. And you have to resolve it before the rider gives up on you. Now, how do you pass control to the rider when you are in a life-threatening situation? I just want to go back into that, is by becoming an observer. Okay, you have to remove yourself from the situation. And you will find out that most of the time it will happen by itself. Your system is built in such a way that when you get into a situation like that, you know, like I said, what happened to me with the sliding car, and it happened to me also a couple of years ago. I ran into a cougar because I hike on the mountains almost every day. And usually I do it in the morning, which is fine. But that day I went in the late afternoon, evening. And, you know, when I walk, I'm in a dream mode. I meditate, I dream. And when I opened my eyes, there was a cougar standing in front of me looking at me. And nobody around. And, you know, so again, I passed control to the rider. Like I somehow I became an observer, and then I did things that I wouldn't have done with the logical mind. I started threatening the cougar. I started shouting and making moves like I'm going to attack the cougar, and the cougar walked away. But if you asked me a minute ago what will I do if I see a cougar, I couldn't tell you. Like I didn't know what I'm going to do. So, you know, I became an observer, and I've done, in this case, what the rider instructed me to do, because it wasn't something I was planning. Now, you know, in Hebrew, in the Jewish tradition, we say there is a divine providence, I think it's in English, which means that you get a personal supervision by God that protects you. So really, that personal supervision and protection you get from your rider, which is a representative of God. Even when you pray or whatever you do, you actually do it with the rider. Okay? But keep in mind that providence works both ways. It can make you sick when he doesn't like what you do, or it can save your life when he doesn't, you know, when he doesn't want you to go to leave this world yet. So when we talk about providence, it works both ways. Often, and this I'm saying from personal experience, is that the rider will send you messages through other people. You know, there are some people, psychics and people that are very connected, like mediums, and it is easier or more possible for the rider to actually communicate with them than communicating with you, even though it's sitting right on top of you, because that communication is inhibited on purpose. So sometimes it will send you messages through other people, and that happens actually quite often. Problem is that most of the time we don't decipher those messages. We don't realize they are messages for us. But many times, you know, I have somebody who is psychic, lives in Israel, and I talk to quite often. And when he tells me something, gives me a message, he always says, this actually came from you. And I think this is what it's meant. It comes from my rider that's trying to pass a message to me through somebody who it can communicate with. Now, manifesting or meditating or using outer intention and any clairvoyance or divination can only occur when you are close to the rider, when you are in, like, you remove your ego and your logic and all these things. That's you know, that's the only time you can achieve anything in any of those instances where you try to connect with the universe or with nature, whatever, how you describe it. But really is you are trying to connect with the rider, with your heart, because from there everything is connected there. Whether you want nature or God or anything, it comes through the rider. Okay, the horse cannot communicate with nature or God directly. The horse can only connect with physical things. You know, like children, young children are mostly in rider mode. They don't have yet, opinions and ego and all these things. They are quite naive, so to say, and that's why you know, they are almost like directly from the rider. That's why they can see things that adults cannot see or sense or feel. And then when we grow up, we slowly, you know, develop our own system of managing reality, and we distance ourselves from the rider until we almost completely disconnect. And you know, all the limitations in life are in the horse. They are not in the rider. No. And it depends how spiritual, and I'll define spiritual in a minute, the horse is. The more spiritual it is, the better it connects with the rider. And you know, people like Moses or Abraham or Jesus, they were almost 99.9% spiritual. So when if you were to deal with them, you would actually be talking to the rider, not to the horse. The horse, it was just like a mouthpiece. Now here is an interesting observation, and I would say use it as an exercise so that you can feel your rider, so you can actually feel that there is a rider up there. And it will enhance your ability to connect, to manifest, to create reality, and so on. You know, if you try to recall events from your childhood, you know, things that happened, things that you experienced when you were certain ages, 10, 12, 15, 20, you will realize that it was always the same entity that experienced this thing. It didn't have an age. The age you put there because you remember that it was when you were 10. But if you ignore that, the experience itself was not experienced by a 10 years old. It was experienced by the rider. And it's always the same experience, the same entity, if you think about it, that experiences it. It's not somebody younger or older. You know, when you think about what happened there, it's totally not age related unless you attach the age to it. Right? Because if somebody asks you, okay, do you remember what some event that happened when you were 10? Oh yeah, you know, I fell and I broke my arm chasing this other person, other boy or whatever, right? But it has nothing to do with the age. The experience was experienced by the rider. And the rider has no age, it's ageless. It doesn't have time. It doesn't exist in a domain when there is time or age or any of that. And that's why, like I said, if you think about it carefully, you will see that there is no age mark there on that experience. It feels the same as if it happened today, right? That's why we also feel that we don't get older. Like many times we say, oh, I am this old. You know, it doesn't feel like it because there is no age from the rider perspective. There is also that also is the reason why you cannot figure out where you are. Like I said earlier, like where you are in your head, or are you in your hand? Are you where are you? We don't know because you are in the rider actually. You are not in the physical world. The real you. Okay? Because the real you is actually a combination of all these things together. That's why you can step back and look at everything as if it was like, call it out-of-body experience, right? When that happens to people, they actually become the real themselves. So that's the reason you cannot pinpoint where you are or even who you are. Also, you know, when people meditate, sometimes the time changes. Like it's not the time the clock measures. You know, sometimes it's much shorter or sometimes much longer. you meditate and you think that you have done it for like when you really get into a deep meditative state, you think it's only like 10 minutes past, and you look on the clock and it shows an hour and a half. Okay, the reason for that is because when you meditate really deeply, you come very close to the rider and you start to see things from that perspective, and there is no time there. So time, so to say, stops for you because it doesn't exist. And when you come back, you know, it looks like only 10 minutes because it's the time between when you started until you left. When you left, the time stopped counting, stopped passing. So when you contemplate all these things, you know, you will start to realize that there is the two entities. And this is really the key to spirituality. Because if you cannot somehow sense or feel that, and I said I'll define spirituality. Spirituality is the ability to sense that, or to feel that, or to know it even better, that there is this horse and rider situation in this reality. Now, as I said before, you know, some horses have no riders, and I would mention few people that, in my opinion, you know, are that way. And like I said, would be Stalin, Hitler. I would say Donald Trump would be one of them. And, you know, they can manifest anything. The thing is that without having a rider, the other side of the other flip of the coin is that whatever they manifest doesn't last, because it's not connecting with the rest of the universe. It's something that's, you know, very egoistically and selfishnessly created by them for them. Everything they do is for them. So that cannot last because it doesn't have the harmony to connect with the rest of reality. So eventually it falls down. And if you look at Stalin or Hitler or Trump, they create a certain situation because they can manifest it, but eventually it goes away. It's not, you know, it's not making the world that way, the way they want it, because the world has its own dynamics. So this is the upside and downside of having no rider. And in my opinion, you know, certain people in this world are riderless, and they are here just as statics, whatever you call it, in a movie, extras in the movie, just to make this reality work and be more dynamic. And you probably ran into this kind of people many times by yourself, or at least that's how it felt. So, you know, I don't want to repeat myself here, is that the very, very important that you create change constantly, use your talents. And most of you know what talents you have. And, you know, when you don't use them, it's because of necessities of life, right? It's like if somebody is educated as a physician in a third world country and they immigrate to North America, they will not let them work as a doctor. They will go and work some other work because, you know, they cannot do what they are good at. Let's say they are really good at surgeon or something like that. So it's very important that that person actually comes back and continues to do what they are good at and not get stuck in something else, because that, you know, from their perspective, it will be, oh, you know, I'm unhappy and that's why I'm getting sick. But in reality, it's the rider which is unhappy and makes you sick. And it has a remedy. So you just have to act. Don't go with the flow and you know, for the rest of your life work at McDonald's, taking an extreme. Just do it for a short time, and you know, then use all the tools that I talked about here to manifest a reality where you are a doctor and a surgeon again. And it will happen because you have that ability and the rider will support you. So it will be, again, this outer intention in reality transurfing. It will just make it happen. with events and things that you know that you will never be able to explain. So going back, trust, okay, not belief, trust is the key to make the rider create the reality you request. And if you look on the US dollar bill, it says, in God we trust. It doesn't say in God we believe. It says, in God we trust. And that's the key. Like, you have to trust. Now, I'm not talking about religion. I just brought that as an example. But you have to trust that what you want to manifest, or the reality you want, you have to trust that it will happen, that it can happen, and it will happen. Because if you have doubts, then the rider will not pass it through, and you will not create that reality. Now, part of the reason we don't trust has to do with our personality, our memories, experiences, and so on. And I would say that for that, in order to make yourself feel better about yourself and understand yourself better, you need a good mentor. And what's a good mentor? A good mentor is one that talks to your rider, not to the horse. Because if you go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, they only talk to the horse. They don't even want to know that there is a rider, because this is not what they teach them in school. So if they talk to the horse, the remedy is very limited. They can do only that much. It's the same like taking medications, right? It deals with the symptoms, but it never really does anything to the problem. Any pill you take, doesn't really deal with the problem, except maybe when you take antibiotics and it kills the bacteria. But it still doesn't deal with the problem, because there is a reason why you got that bacterial infection. It's just another illness. So if you don't fix whatever brought it, it will come back. Okay, so like I say, a good mentor is somebody who can talk to your rider, and it will feel totally different from somebody who talks to your horse. Another way to influence the rider is to write down, not affirmation, but write down all the things that you remember which are positive and good about yourself. Write it down on a page, don't make it too long, and read it to yourself aloud. The rider actually listens when you speak aloud. When you just think about it or speak to yourself, it doesn't go anywhere. But if you say it aloud, somehow, again from experience, the rider will pick it up and eventually will accept it. So if you keep saying, I have done this, I had all these businesses and I was extremely successful, and I had all these friends and they all love me, and so on, you will eventually, so to say, convince the rider, and you will feel much, much better about yourself, which will give you much more ability to trust and get rid of the doubts. Because the more you believe in yourself, the less doubts you have in your ability to create a reality, right? We talk many times about intuition, so that you try to make a decision about something, whether to buy something or to marry somebody or to start a business. And many times we hear those gurus saying, listen to your intuition. Now, what is the intuition? So the intuition is actually the rider. And, I have taken this course with, I think it's William Whitecloud, and I actually sent it because he offered a free one, and I sent it to my clients, and many of them took that course. It was, I think, a few weeks. And in that course, he did something very interesting. He did an exercise that was extremely powerful on my understanding of what the intuition is actually. Because, you know, as you can probably, if you watched my previous videos, you know, I did a lot of face reading. I still do it, but not as a standalone thing. Just do it with clients when we speak. But I can look at somebody and I can tell, you know, their character, their personality. I can tell almost everything about that person by looking at them, at, say, in a few seconds. And I thought that was kind of a spiritual ability or something, because I was always that way. But in that course, he proved me wrong, actually. And what he did in this exercise, I think there was like 1,000 people in that course. It was via Zoom. And then he broke it down to small rooms with 10 or so people each. And each one had like a leader, instructor or somebody. And what he made us do is read faces, like look at the person, like put them you would have somebody randomly, another person, and you would look at that person, and what he told us to do is just speak, don't think. If you think, it doesn't work anymore. You have to speak as fast as you can before your mind can think. Just say whatever comes to your mouth, not to your mind, and say it about that person. You know, and I was matched with this lady from Australia, which when I looked at her, with my ability to read faces, I couldn't see anything spiritual. So I thought, well, she's not going to be able to say anything. And when she started speaking and she managed to follow his instructions, she described me better than any psychic I've ever seen in my life. It was totally mind-blowing. And that taught me that if you don't think and you just speak, you basically, is the same like passing control to the rider. Same as, you know, when I had this car incident and I let go of the steering wheel and the pedals, I didn't do anything. It's the same thing. You just let the rider speak through you. And then everything that's said has to be true. It was an amazing experience. And then when we had the meeting after the exercise, I would say 90% of the people there experienced exactly the same thing. So to me, it was a shock. So what I'm saying here, that if you can use that concept, okay, of not thinking sometimes, just let the rider get through you, don't think, you know, and you can exercise. He gave us some exercises, like, for example, to speak, just not looking at anybody, but just to practice speaking fast without thinking. And it's quite difficult. Even now I have difficulties to do it. But I think that practicing that will help you to be able to use your intuition and not block it with your mind. So, you know, I said that proved to me 100% that actually works. When you get out of the way, then the rider will take care of things much better than you can. Now, as you can see, the horse can only execute beyond, cannot execute beyond the physical reality. Okay? If it wants to execute anything beyond the physical reality, it needs to use the rider. Now, on the other hand, the rider can create what it wants using the horse only. Like, it cannot create anything physical or trigger anything physical without using the horse. So it's a dependent relationship. So, you know, the key to happiness is listen very carefully to your rider. So don't make too much noise, because when you make too much noise, and noise, I don't mean by physical noise, but, you know, in your mind, then you cannot listen to your rider. And once you do that, you know, you get lost. You can go and find the carrot, but that's that. Now, for those of you who watched that video that I referred to at the beginning, the Reality Transurfing in 3 paragraphs, at the end there, you know, I was telling the story about Norman and my oldest son, who got very, very sick with this autoimmune disease illness. That was back in 2017. So just to give you an update, my son is well, and you know, he's back to his physical activities. He lost some function in a couple of his fingers because when the illness was there, it's eating the joints. But you know, that's, I would say, a small price to pay to be completely fine otherwise. So okay, if you arrived here that far, I have a gift for you. It's a book that I read some years ago. That book was written somewhere in 1850 or so. This is almost 200 years ago, by Prentice Prentice Mulford, and it's called Thoughts Are Things. Thoughts Are Things, and I would say it's as good as Reality Transurfing or Neville Goddard or any of those, or even better. And keep in mind, it was written 200 years ago, and very, very, very powerful book. And it's written in a very good way, like very easy to digest and read. And I will insert a link here in the description. You can go and download that book from my website. And I highly recommend you read it, because like I said, it says many things which are similar, but has its own original, you know, things, and it will help you in your journey to manifest. This is what the book looks like. I'll show it to you. Just give me a minute here. Okay. So let me see if I have anything else that I want to tell you here. Yeah, that's it. So until the next time, I thank you for watching. I wish you all the best, to you and to yours. And I hope to see you again in the next video. Take care.